How many times have you tried to search for HR answers at work, only to find out that you don't have access to what you need and that no one knows where to find it? Well, imagine a world where your company has a custom chat GPT that you could ask and that would pull up anything you need to know.
You're listening to Found, TechCrunch's podcast that brings you the stories behind the startups. And today we're talking to Arvind Jain, the founder and CEO of Glean, an AI-powered work assistant that connects and understands all your enterprise knowledge. I'm Becca Skutak, and here to talk about how to access your internal information in the cloud is my fabulous co-host,
Dominic Midori Davis. And of course, before we jump into the conversation, we have our two truths and a lie. So listen carefully to see which one of these statements isn't true. Is that he got the idea for Glean from a pain point at Rubrik, that he had zero problems finding funders for Glean, or that LLMs have been an integral part of enterprise solutions for more years than you'd like to think.
Definitely sounds like the basis for a really interesting conversation. But before we get to it, a quick note that we would love if you could rate and review the show wherever you are currently listening to it already. That is super helpful for feedback for us on our end, and we would be very grateful for it. But without further ado, here's our conversation with Arvind. Well, hey, Arvind, how's it going?
It's going good. How about you?
Hanging in there. Excited to have you on the show today. So why don't we dive right in? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Glean?
Yeah, so Glean is a 5-year-old company. Think of Glean like Google or ChatGPT, but inside your enterprise. So it's a search engine. It's an AI assistant. Glean connects with all of your company's information and data that lives in like many different systems like Slack or Google Drive or Salesforce. And then it actually gives your employees one place where they can go and ask any questions, and Glean is going to answer those questions for them using your company knowledge.
And that's such an interesting concept because I know I've worked at many different places where their approach to the backend system, how you could find, like you said, like answers to questions you'd have about internal things has been so varied. Some places it's a Google Doc, that's it. If it's not in there, you have to ask someone. Other places it's like a whole sprawling type of thing. So it's clearly been a problem. But why did you get interested in solving this to begin with?
Well, this is a problem that I've actually faced my entire work career. And so has actually most of the people at Glean. But the catalyst for this was, before Glean, I was doing another startup called Rubrik, which we started in 2014. And we grew, quite quickly in Rubrik. In 4 years, we were actually, I think, more than 1,000 people. But as we grew, we actually saw that the productivity inside the company did not catch up with it. In fact, there was a year when we grew our engineering team 3 times, but the number of lines of code we wrote were, actually remained the same. So productivity was taking a big hit. So I was curious, we did a pulse survey. We wanted to actually see what's coming in the way of people getting great work done. It was actually very illuminating. The survey, our annual pulse survey, and one of the questions there was, do you have the information that you need to do your work? And that was actually the lowest scoring question for us in the survey. Everybody was complaining that I cannot find anything in this company. I don't know where to go look for things. I don't know who to go and ask for help. And I was not surprised because, we were born in this modern era. At Rubrik, we use more than 200 different cloud-based SaaS applications. Our knowledge was all over the place. And in fact, I couldn't find anything myself. So we tried to solve that problem. My background, before starting Rubrik, I was actually a search engineer at Google for over a decade. So when people, come and tell me that, I can't find things, my first instinct is that, we should have a search engine, that actually connects with all of our company knowledge. And so try to actually go and buy one. And the process of trying to figure out what we could buy, we realized that there's no product in the market that actually connects with all of your hundreds of different cloud-based SaaS applications and gives a Google-like search experience for all of that data. So that was sort of the catalyst. So we ran into the problem, and it was actually quite surprising to me, a problem that every single person who works in every single company faces, and yet there's no product to buy, was quite odd. And, it got me excited to actually go and start Glean.
Yeah. I'm curious, did you consider just building this in Rubrik, just for Rubrik? Or when you started to realize this, were you instantly well, this should be its separate company because then Rubrik and beyond can use it? What was your thought process once you saw the results from the survey and were we need to do something about this and sort of figuring out how to approach this?
Well, the first instinct was just to buy the product. We were busy building our company. It was not on my mind to actually go and start one more company. But interestingly, there were some synergies between the Rubrik product and this problem of search because Rubrik is a company where we actually connect with all of enterprise data and bring that data in one place, but for the purposes of keeping it safe. our core product was actually bringing all enterprise data in one place. So then I thought that, hey, for search, we have to do the same thing and we've already done it. All I need to do is now make that data searchable. So maybe we can actually have a second product, inside Rubrik that will, of course, solve our own problem in our company, but we'll actually have one more product, a big, massive revenue line. So that was my initial thought that maybe I should do it, inside Rubrik. But then as we dug deeper, it sort of that was I'm a technical person, so I'm sort of naive. When I say oh, this great technical synergy, we should do this second product totally, right? But then when you think about business, it turned out that our sellers, they had no idea how they would sell a product like this. That's a different domain. This is a different domain. And also we were growing fast. We were a successful business, but we were actually at a very, very low market share. And so there's so much to do, on our core products. So we couldn't distract our company. So that's when I sort of started to feel maybe it makes sense to do it separately.
What was it like making the decision to leave Rubrik? I know I've just spent quite some time covering Rubrik's recent IPO. The company's continued to do well, continued to grow since you left. And it sounds like, of course, you were there from the beginning and then through such a heightened period of scale and expansion. What was it like being okay, I've built this to this point. It's still going up and to the right, but I have so much conviction on this other idea that I am going to step away. What was it like actually making that decision?
I think it was easy for me. Easy in one sense that I fundamentally get excited by technical problems and solving them. And so for me, this was super exciting. I know search is a problem that I absolutely love because it's sort of like you're building magic for your users. Just imagine this, you can come to Glean and you can ask any question that you have, or not just ask question, you can actually give it any task that you want to do. And now Glean is actually going to, use all of your company's knowledge and actually figure out how to answer that question or solve that task for you. It's actually promising something that no individual in the company can promise to you. This is magic. And so sort of to solve that problem, it's so challenging, but it's also so much sort of rewarding for an engineer. So no, that's sort of the inherent love. I was just super excited. So that's the overriding emotion, that I'm going with. So I really, really want to do it. But of course, it was actually difficult because I started Rubrik as well. And a lot of people in the company there, they started that journey with me and I didn't want to abandon it.
Right.
So I thought, I was thoughtful about it. We went and first hired somebody who was better than me to actually run the engineering team. That was my role there at Rubrik. And we did a long transition where I actually spent I didn't really leave Rubrik immediately. I started working on Glean, but I was actually still sort of ramping down smoothly. And that was the process that we went through. But it was difficult in that sense. Well, I guess I always find it difficult to leave any place that I am at.
Yeah.
And I imagine fundraising for Glean was actually quite easy for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, fundraising was okay. I think this is actually interesting, not super easy. Yes, I had the benefit of being a founder already with the company that was succeeding. But at the same time, the problem that I wanted to solve, I don't think anybody else wanted to solve. Enterprise search is such a dead space and it's a graveyard, no company ever succeeded. So I shared, interesting stories. I had investors who came and told me that look, I'm writing a check here, I want to back you, but just don't do enterprise search, do anything else. I'm okay with it. So there's a bit of challenge, convincing people that this problem was worth solving, the one that I wanted to work on.
Why do you think, I know you mentioned that people weren't super interested in this space, but why do you think that is? Because I know for me personally, just as an employee at companies, this is an issue that sounds like you had the same experience. Drives me nuts when I know the answer is there and I cannot find it. And because it's an internal thing, you are confined to where you can look. You can't just hop onto Google and search for it because it's of course not going to come up. And so why was there that hesitation about this category? Or maybe that's just, I'm just so enraged by this problem myself that I don't get how other people wouldn't be.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you ask any individual, they would actually tell you, well, this is such a big problem for them, constantly causes them frustration. Everybody that I talk to as an individual, nobody has ever told me that this is not a problem for them, that this is not something that actually takes a lot of time away from, their work and they would love to have a great product. So that was there. But when you go and talk to investors, they're more sophisticated. They actually look at the history of companies in search. They look at what happened to them. And yes, they all failed. And there are reasons why this is actually a hard product. There's so many difficulties if you think about search. The number one, there were no budgets for this category. The market is how are you going to actually get people to pay for it? Number two, people actually always thought of this was sort of like a vitamin, not a painkiller. everybody would actually come and tell you that, yes, I know it's hard for people to find things, but, things are working fine. Like, we're sort of progressing, I'm sure I can live without it. I've been living without it for a while. And like, I've got other important problems to work on. And so you don't have a painkiller. And if you don't have a painkiller, you can't build a successful startup. So there were like, those legitimate, arguments against why people were sort of reluctant because, like oftentimes you look for past successes to sort of, to actually make future investments. So those are some of the reasons why there was the doubt in this market category. In fact, I think for many, many years, there's no venture investment in this space. That's how bad this space was from a VC investment perspective. I think those are some of the reasons. But I think for me, like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because ultimately, when everybody that struggles with this problem, there's got to be a solution. And we were ready to actually jump and build that.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about is because when you guys started the company back in 2019, obviously the venture space has changed a lot in the last 5 years. How people think about AI, because I know you guys are big on bringing, I know you mentioned earlier, like the AI work assistant piece of this as well. What was it like starting the company in 2019, like, and watching interest in the space you're building and grow, interest in AI grow? Like, there's just such a different feeling around stuff like this, especially enterprise software now than there was in 2019. And how has the company been able to tap into that? How has that impacted you guys? How have you been able to let the changing market conditions around these things work to your advantage?
Yeah, that's a long question. I'll give you a long answer for it.
Yeah, sorry, that's like 5 questions.
Yeah. So, but I think from a journey perspective, when we started, we had a very clear mission. We're building a Google for people in their work lives. And so this is a really good search over all of the company knowledge. And one of the interesting things is that LLMs were actually already in the market by that time. Not everybody knew about them, but people who worked on search, they knew about language models because the language models originally were built in Google to make Google search better. So we knew about them. Our team is actually, most of us are actually, ex-Google search engineers. So that was actually a core part of our product from day one. And it allowed us to actually build a smarter search engine, which was not keyword based, it just matches a few keywords in your question, like with documents. We could actually do semantic and conceptual matching of people's questions with, the company knowledge using these language models. So we've been, using these language models. We were the first company to actually build vector search and embeddings. These are the terms that you hear these days in the AI world. So we're working on these from the beginning. Now, a few things like, one, if you think about AI, the AI technology has actually made so much progress over the last 5 years. It just keeps getting better and better. The first way we actually leverage those to actually use the advancements in technology to make our product better. So think about, again, our product. Like when we started with the product, you could come in and ask a question and we'll point you to the right good documents that you're looking for. But think about your intention. You have a question. You're actually just looking for an answer to that. You're not actually looking for like a list of documents.
Right.
So as these language models got better, we were actually able to use them to extract answers from your knowledge. So they were not good enough to generate, but they were good enough to extract. So we use these language models. And sometimes when you ask a question in Glean, we would be able to actually show you the answer on the top of our search results page. And that would be an extracted human generated answer that the language model pulled, from your knowledge. But then the language model kept getting better and better. And now it could actually answer more complicated questions and it could actually read a longer, 10-page document and actually synthesize and generate an answer from it. So it's sort of a natural evolution for us. Like as this technology got better, our product got better with it. So that's actually, has proved to be very, very helpful for us because, now Glean today goes beyond it doesn't work like Google for your workspace anymore. It works like ChatGPT where you can come in and ask great questions. We can answer those for you. So AI technologies have been super helpful for us in terms of making our product better over time. And I think for us, like as a team, we have that mindset where we're always asking our engineers to just keep looking outside. Don't be inwards. Don't actually drink the Kool-Aid and just celebrate your own technology. Always look for what's happening outside and be ready to throw stuff and actually embrace what's actually better from open domain and from the industry. So that sort of culture has actually, has served us well and we've been able to take advantage of these market trends. And then the second thing that I would say, which is actually also has been very beneficial for us as a company, is that remember we were talking about how nobody really cared about what we were building and neither the investors in some sense and nor the customers. This was a niche play, it was an evangelical play. We had to actually go and really convince leaders and only people with super high conviction in this space like us were the ones who we could actually go and sell the product to. It was very much a market creation play, but it actually all changed, with the advent of this AI revolution that we are in now. The market has changed now. And now today, if you think about every business, they're all thinking about how we can embrace AI. so that we can stay relevant for the future. And as part of that, if you think about the CIO or the CEO of a company, what comes to your mind first when you think about AI? I bet it's a tool like ChatGPT, right?
Right.
So everybody inside the enterprise, they're looking for something like ChatGPT, but a ChatGPT that's built for their company, for their knowledge. And luckily, that's exactly what Glean is. And so our opportunity has changed from where we had to go and evangelize our product and convince people to now we have a product that actually everybody wants. So there's a market demand, and it has allowed us to actually grow our business much faster in the last 2 years.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about the model too, thinking about how you guys have continued to ramp up the AI technology you guys are using, I am curious, how do your models learn? You're selling this to companies, they're using it within their own internal structure. It sounds more intense than it is, but like the dark web sites that companies use internally and things like that. How does it learn? Like, do you have it learn in the way like a ChatGPT was? It just takes in the feedback and keeps building on itself? Or is there more of a stopgap there, more of a review process because it is potentially sensitive information within a company? Or how do you guys think about training the models and having them continue to grow?
Yeah, really good question. So there are two different techniques that we use. The first one, we take all the knowledge in the company that we deem to be safe. Knowledge that is actually meant for the company in a broad sense. Think about documents, that everybody in the company can see. So we'll actually take a subset of your company knowledge that we think is safe to use, and then train models with those. And so these models then are actually learning your enterprise language, your lingo, your code words, and sort of get smarter with that. So it actually now has the understanding of like all of the key concepts inside your company. And it uses that knowledge then to actually answer questions in a much better way. But the second thing that we do is we also use a rack style architecture where the models that we train are typically smaller. They're not actually good for generation. They're actually good more for matching knowledge and with questions. So when it comes time to actually generate an answer using AI, we actually use out-of-the-box models like Gemini or GPT-4 or Claude. And here what's happening is that, you come and ask a question, and we'll use our core search technology to assemble the relevant pieces of content from within your company, which is safe. In fact, which is safe in the sense that if I come and ask a question, it's only going to pull knowledge that I have permissions for within the company. So the search engine is actually doing the job of taking a question and assembling some relevant pieces of information. And that's where we use our privately trained models. Now, but once the search engine has done its job and actually given maybe 2 or 3 documents or paragraphs, then we'll just use a standard model like GPT-4 and tell it that, hey, here's a question. I want you to work on this particular piece of knowledge that I've pulled together and answer that question for me. So that's the architecture. But you're absolutely right. That's a really good question that in an enterprise, so much of the knowledge is actually private, not accessible to everybody inside the company. So you can't really just go and blindly train models on all of your company knowledge.
I was just thinking, I was like, I don't even know what I would do if I was using this and the AI like hallucinated something about my vacation time question, and I would just get like gaslit by my internal company system. But it sounds like that thankfully will not happen.
Yeah.
More from this conversation right after a quick break.
I wanted to know about, I guess, the cybersecurity elements of this. I imagine perhaps you built out your own, but also if companies are in charge of their own, if they have their own Gleans, does the cybersecurity fall on them, or is that more of a you?
Yeah, so it's a really good point. Like security is it's a really, really important consideration for companies, especially, as they start to roll out AI technologies, because AI technologies are very powerful, but they're actually working on your data. And you have to like make sure that, first of all, that your data doesn't leave your environments. Like you don't want like public models to train those models on your private company data. So that's one of the most basic things that we have to do. And so like with Glean, we sort of give that guarantee to our customers that when the Glean models are training inside their environments and inside our customers' environments and training on that none of that data is ever going to leave their premises. But when it comes to security, there are a lot of other interesting problems. I'll give you one example or two. You have to actually build a safe and secure and responsible AI experience. Let's say I go and ask a question inside the company, like, what's Becca's salary? And I should really not have access to that information. Like, it's none of my business.
I hope not.
Right? So if you sort of imagine, like if you took all of your company's data and knowledge and actually put them into a model and then let everybody in the company go and ask questions to that model, well, it's going to answer that question for me then, right? Because somewhere, of course, like inside the company, there's a document that lists what your salary is. So you have to be careful. Like you have to build these AI products with that permissions and governance in mind. So you have to understand that, in fact, like 90% of your company knowledge is actually private in nature. It's only a few employees can access that information. So when you come in Glean and you ask a question, it actually knows who you are. It knows what content you can access within the enterprise. And it's only going to use that knowledge to answer questions for you. So that's another element of security that you have to actually solve for your customers. And so we do it that way. And then finally, I would say that, even that is not enough. What happens typically in companies is that over the years, a lot of knowledge has been created. Some of it is actually protected properly. Like, for example, you write a Google Doc and you make sure that if it is sensitive, that only, you keep it private with you or share with like a few other people. But people make mistakes. And you often have like more sensitive documents in the company, which they accidentally may have shared with the entire company. Now, in the world before AI, nobody could find anything anyway, as we were talking about. So it was not a problem. But in the new world with AI, like it's so easy to ask questions and AI does the work of finding the right knowledge for you. So you have to actually also think about security more fundamentally. Like we have quite a few of our customers where they deployed Glean and actually got scared when they saw what it does because they could ask questions and we were answering questions. Even though we were safe, we properly respect permissions. People were finding sensitive documents, which were overshared within the company. And so we actually also solve those problems for them. But cybersecurity is actually one of the key pillars. When you think about AI, you have to think about security first before you think about rolling out AI inside your company.
And I wanted to switch gears just a little bit because we've talked throughout the conversation about the fact that, of course, you were a founder at Rubrik as well. Starting your second company, we so rarely talk to founders who didn't exit the company before starting the second one. But I'm curious, like, what knowledge, what experiences, what did you bring from Rubrik over to Glean, especially as a founder, as someone in a leadership role? And what did you do at Rubrik that you were like, I'm going to approach this differently the second time around?
So one thing that I learned from Rubrik was that product rules. I'm an engineer by training. So to me, I've always felt that, hey, building a product is easy. Building a business is hard. Selling a product is hard because I've never done it. I don't know how to do it. So I always had that anxiety when I was at Rubrik. I was building a product, but like, why would anybody care about this product? Why would anybody go and buy it? And so all my stress was around those business topics. But then as we built the product, ultimately, I realized that that's the only thing that matters. Everything else actually falls in place. So when we started Glean, like I didn't have that. We just kept that focus on build the best product and everything else, and the company is going to fall in place. The other thing, which these are obvious things. I feel like building a startup is fundamentally about just building your team. That's your only role. Like my role as a CEO is to just build the right team. I don't have to do anything else. And so building a really good engineering team, building a really good go-to-market team, all of our focus is on that. When we started Glean, we would spend a lot of time trying to find people who were really, really passionate about the problem that we were solving and were accomplished engineers. And we built a really strong foundation with them. And so those are some of the learnings, from Rubrik days. One of the things which we did differently at Glean relative to Rubrik, again, because every company is different, every market is different. I felt that culture-wise, Rubrik was a great business success. We actually grew very fast. We made a lot of revenue. We would always in the company celebrate that business success. And we rarely celebrated product success. And I think that sort of like created this culture of, you create momentum through business success and the product passion sort of takes the backseat. And if you have a moment or a time when like maybe business is slow, economy is slow, sometimes I felt we were a little bit low on how connected people felt with our product, with our company, because we didn't talk about it as much. So at Glean, that's one of the things that we've changed. We really focus on making it all about our product and the problems that we're solving. And our celebrations are almost never about a big deal that we sold. We don't talk that much about that. Our celebrations are about the great problems that we solve for our customers. Celebrate like the great quotes or the appreciation that customers give to us on our product. So we sort of kept it very much about that. And the way we hire also, a big part of like how we select people at Glean is we are looking for not just a really, really good engineer, for example, but we're looking for somebody who's actually equally interested in building and solving this problem as we are. And that product passion is actually the first thing that we look for. We really want somebody who faces this problem. Of course, we know everybody faces this problem, but we want to actually hire people who are so frustrated and bothered by this problem today that they just really, really want to come and solve it. And I think that's sort of what creates, that sort of really deep passion and connection in the company. for us.
And I know going from Rubrik to Glean, you're a founder at both companies, but remind me, you were not the CEO at Rubrik.
Yes, I wasn't. I ran R&D. Yeah.
Right. So switching that type of a leadership role, what was that like? I mean, you were a founder at the other company. Of course, you had a say in things, but that's a very different role than being the CEO. Yeah. How was that?
I mean, it's a learning experience. So, I go in and I've never been a CEO. So I'm clueless and I know that, but I have the attitude that, okay, we're going to go figure it out. And I think it's somewhat easy in some sense, for somebody to be the R&D leader or an engineer and start a company. Because if you think about the journey of a company, even though I'm the CEO on day one, what am I doing in terms of my job? First, we have to build a product. So sort of it's a smooth transition because even though I'm the CEO, I'm still focused on initially just building the team and actually, in fact, building the product. I actually wrote code as well, even though I was the CEO at Glean as well. And then slowly and steadily, you to actually figure out new things that you've not done before. For example, now I need to go and talk to a few customers and actually try to convince them that, hey, buy the product from us. So I've never done that. I've never sold anything before. But you get your time to sort of go and learn each one of those new skills. So I felt it was actually quite smooth for me. And it's the same way, I'm not done. I don't think actually I've learned much about being a CEO. Maybe I'm at a 5% mark or a 10% mark in that journey right now, because we have a long journey ahead for us at Glean.
Knowing that you guys are so product focused, how would you describe how you hire, how you lead the team, how you do those aspects of being a CEO as well? People talk about being product led often, but the way you've talked about being product obsessed, that's how we celebrate milestones and things, is not a narrative we've actually really come across. So I'm definitely curious how would you describe your leadership style when you are approaching things with that lens in mind?
So my leadership style, I think I'm only doing one thing, which is I'm just trying to hire really smart leaders. And I'm just hoping that they're going to just do everything that they need to do. I don't like the model of helping a leader, for example. I don't think I can really help any one of my direct reports as an example. So imagine as a CEO, I'd hire somebody who can lead engineering. I'd hire somebody who can lead product, somebody who can lead sales, marketing, HR, or legal. And guess what? I really don't know anything about any one of those functions except for engineering and product. So with that said, I think the only model that I feel is scalable is where we get really good people who know how to do that stuff and then let them just do that stuff and be there mostly as a sounding board. So that's the model that I feel is the only workable model. And so I actually, in fact, I tell my leaders that when we hire them, I actually tell them that, look, this is going to be our model where you will take full responsibility of your function and I will have no role to play in that. At most, I can be a sounding board to you. And I'm not going to be in the business of evaluating you either. I don't like evaluating any one of my leaders. I'm just go with that hope that everything is going to be great. And that's my mindset. And then you see how it goes. And generally, I think things work well for us. We have leaders who are capable, who have done a great job, their function, and they run it independently. So that's the model that I like to follow. Sometimes, of course, it's easier said than done. You also have anxiety and sometimes you actually meddle a little bit too much. So I do get those complaints, from my leaders that, hey, you talk about being, you don't want to do anything in my function, but then you actually do come in and share opinions and things like that. So yeah, so it's a fine balance. But at least the North Star for me from a leadership perspective is that we have independent leaders who run the company together. And my role is actually very limited in that sense. My role is limited to just making sure that we can bring those people in.
And I feel like I have to ask this. I don't know if I should. So in terms of what's next for the company, I guess the general question is what's next, but have you thought about maybe if you want to IPO this or, exit it? What are your long-term visions for Glean?
So first of all, I think we are very, very early in our journey. I already told you what our product is supposed to do. Our vision is think of Glean. It's going to actually, in the future, the way we work, it's going to fundamentally change for all of us. Our goal is that in a few years from now, 50% of the work that you do today yourself, Glean is going to do that work for you. It's going to be that personal assistant that we're going to bring to every single person who works, and it's going to take that much of their work away from them. So to get to that, that's actually a hard problem. So we'll keep working on it. So we have no plans, for example, from our company perspective, to actually become a multi-product company, think about 2 other new products. This is the only problem that we need to solve. And we can keep working on it. And I know that we can keep working on it for our entire careers. and the company is going to exceed like each one of our personal careers. It's going to keep going. So that's our vision. So from that perspective, we don't think about exit at all. The company is going to remain independent. It's going to hopefully, go public in a few years. But that's again, like that's going to be like one of the milestones, and hopefully what we're going to be building a generational company with Glean.
And that is a perfect place to wrap. So thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been super fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
And that was our conversation with Arvind. Dom, what was the lie?
The lie was that he had zero problems finding funders for Glean. Apparently, even he struggled a bit, which, Becca...
I know. Looking at how much they've raised now, it's always a little hard to believe that people had trouble fundraising at first. But when he started talking about how VCs and stuff were essentially like, why would enterprises pay for this? I was like, all right, okay. Yeah, that feedback I get, because it's such an annoying problem. But I feel like annoying problems that aren't consumer focused or customer focused in general definitely are like more back burner stuff for like enterprise budgets.
Yeah. I mean, because like as a person employed, this product makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I can see how, people at the higher ups, I can see why people might question it. But I mean, once again, as a person employed, it has been really, it's hard trying to find some stuff for HR stuff. Sometimes, like I said before, like I just don't know. I can't find it. You just got to email someone and say, what am I looking for?
It really is crazy too. And like we're thinking about it through our lens, where it's like the stuff we are trying to find is mainly like handbook stuff and like HR. Like I can't imagine like the companies where it's like you have years of code and years of like internal engineering SOP and things like that you like have to reference and just like can't find, even though you need it to do your job. Like that's crazy, because like this issue bothers me a lot. And it's like, I have to look stuff up like once every 3 months.
No,
like
literally.
There are people who have to look stuff up like all the time.
I know, like it's actually insane. And so, I mean, that's why I'm glad Glean exists. Yeah, I think you asked him why he didn't just build this at Rubrik, right?
Yeah, because that was like my first thought. What was interesting to me is that he left and built this. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had like incubated it at Rubrik and spun it out. Because I feel like any other instance I've heard of like a company being formed in this way, it was kind of like started at the original company and they tried it and then it seemed like it would work. So they spun it out to take it elsewhere. So it was interesting to hear that he like got the idea and he was like, the company I'm working at that I founded has this problem, but I'm going to build it elsewhere.
I love that he was like, I'm so angry, be right back. I got to build a solution for my own problem. Yes.
Like literally. So I guess at first, like I said, like that surprised me. But then as we kept having the conversation and he kept just talking about like how product focused he was, like they only celebrate the product. Like they know if the product's good, like everything else falls in place, which for the most part, it generally ends up being pretty accurate. Then it made more sense to me that he was like, well, we want to focus on the product and we don't want to mess up Rubrik's product. So we're going to just do it separate. And I was like, okay, for someone who like thinks with such like a product lens, I was like, I could maybe understand that argument from his standpoint more, because I would have been like, make it a second revenue stream, like sell this, make Rubrik like have 2 software solutions people want. But then he explained it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like I get that could be like not always smart.
Yeah. Wait, the cybersecurity elements were actually quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about the absolute horror of, Googling what is everyone's salary and then Glean telling you these are the pay discrepancies and how like absolute drama would start.
Glean is a labor ally.
Glean's a labor ally. Oh my gosh.
No, that is funny to think about though. Like a company, like someone training, because they obviously keep everything so closed off, which is like how they can keep the cybersecurity piece of it in play. But it's interesting to think about a company going through and being like, Dominic Midori Davis, access to this? No. Access to this? Maybe. Access? No way. Sure. She can have this. It's funny to think of them picking and choosing like what people have access to, which totally makes sense. I know there's one of the wedding companies actually does this on their site. You can like make a whole list of like the whole weekend of activities and certain people get invited to certain things and don't. So it's like interesting to hear about it in like this kind of a context, but it makes sense. But it's very funny
That's
to
crazy.
think about like someone picking and choosing and being like, this information? No. You don't have access to that.
It's so funny that like the idea that Glean knows like who we are and they're like, no girl, you are an intern. You are not getting access to this. Sorry.
I know.
Yeah, but cybersecurity, I'm obsessed with hearing more about cybersecurity in the realm of stuff like this because it seems like cybersecurity like exists in like this floating world that I don't think about on a daily basis. But
Right.
when the attacks hit, suddenly you're like, oh yeah, what is happening to all of my HR data actually? Who's like responsible for, I guess, saving us?
No, it is really interesting to think about because it's like not even just the internal stuff, but it's just like you're bringing in external software into your, like I was saying, I love that this is the term because like dark web always sounds like very like criminal activity connected, but it's like, no, any private access web page is technically on the dark web because it just can't be accessed by everyone. So it's like you're bringing in external software to like your company's dark web pages that in theory have like the most sensitive information. So it's like not even like people in the company sharing it amongst each other. There is always that piece of like, what if someone hacks Glean or what if someone hacks this and that? But it sounds like they thankfully have thought about it a lot, which is not super surprising considering Rubrik touches the cybersecurity
I was going to
space.
say, like, if I had to trust anyone with building a company that does this, it would probably be the Rubrik people.
Yeah.
Just, we would hope that they I mean, they do know how to make it stop. Or we
Right.
hope.
We hope. The other thing I thought was super interesting was him talking about his transition. Like, obviously, this is not the first time he was a founder, but going from being the head of R&D to being the CEO was like very, very different roles. And so it was interesting to hear him talk about what it was like hiring and how he's never done a lot of the other CEO aspects, like selling the product, et cetera, and how he's kind of like both learned to do some of those things, but also found ways to kind of not spend time on those areas he knows he's not necessarily as experienced in. Him talking about hiring good people and then essentially just like letting them go until randomly micromanaging them and being told to stop is like a very funny leadership strategy. It felt like a very real answer for him to be like, I think I'm letting them go, but sometimes they're telling me otherwise. And I'm trying, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, it's refreshing to hear people be like, I'm trying it. I don't.
He said, I'm just out here. He said, it's my third day out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, being CEO is, I wonder if he likes being, did we ask if he likes being CEO versus the research and development role he had?
Oh, we definitely should have, because how like engineering focused he is, I definitely would be curious for the answer.
I wonder if he even likes being CEO, like, because he seems like very, very product focused. And I actually liked hearing a founder that was so product focused. He said product is king. And I was like, I feel like I've heard that saying before from so many people. And I'm like, okay, here's the product is king side of it all. But yeah, I wonder if he actually likes being CEO.
No, I would be curious about that too. We'll have to have him back on and just ask him that question. Be like, hey, we actually forgot. Do you like your job? Found is hosted by myself, TechCrunch senior reporter Becca Skutak, alongside senior reporter Dominic Midori Davis. Found is produced by Maggie Stamets with editing by Kel. Our illustrator is Bryce Durbin. Found's audience development and social media is managed by Morgan Little, Alyssa Stringer, and Natalie Kreisman. TechCrunch's audio products are managed by Henry Pickavet. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.